Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempty. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Kate Lowry joining us. Kate is a CEO, coach, a venture capitalist, and an author based in Silicon Valley. An expert in fear-based leaders, Kate developed her methodology growing up in a fear-based regime and then refined her approach in the elite worlds of startups, private equity, management consulting, and big tech. Her new book is Unbreakable: How to Thrive Under Fear-Based Leaders, and her book hits store shelves on October 28th, just a few weeks after the release of this show. Welcome to the program, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you. Before we get started, I ask all my guests this question. Please give our listeners the elevator pitch of your origin story.
Definitely. Well, I started my first company around 17 years ago and started a couple more while I was in college. Then I joined McKinsey & Company to build a stronger business toolkit to offer the companies I wanted to work with. And it was then that I really realized how lonely executives are. I did some work with them. I I did some work with them in corporate venture and then moved out to Silicon Valley, where I was chief of staff at an AI startup. And that's where I really learned how profoundly executives and founders influence culture. When they get it right, it's really right. But more often, when they get it wrong, it's really wrong.
Yeah.
I then spent some time at Meta, where I advised the company on which products to build, buy, or kill. And that's really where I learned how to treat everything, including myself, as a product to be iterated. I liked Meta, but it was a little bit too big for me. So I moved back into the venture space, working one-on-one with early stage startup CEOs to help them grow their companies. But I found venture to be a conflict of interest for coaching and advising because the CEOs were so afraid that we would fire them that they didn't
Right.
want to open up to me. And so I set off on my own, and now I run a coaching and advising practice for mission-driven and underrepresented CEOs in Silicon Valley, helping them create products that the world really needs. And in February of this year, I noticed that my clients were starting to spin out. There was such a wave of fear-based leadership happening across business and tech that they really felt that the ground was moving under their feet. And that's when I realized I had a toolkit that they didn't have and started writing my book.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to throw you off there, but I kind of have to laugh out loud. And, when leaders get it right, it's really awesome. But when leaders get it wrong, it's really bad. So thank you for that. Just so you know, Kate, I've had two careers within my career. I was the Andy said leader, that whatever I said went, and everybody had to follow me. And then later in my career, I realized that wasn't the way to go. And so opened my ears, opened my mind, and really leaned in to continuous improvement, organizational health, and team dynamics. So kind of a tale of two leaders there. Kate, if you had to pick one event in your life that was just a real accelerant for you and your career, what would that be?
That's a good question. I think I would probably have to say working in management consulting. When you work in management consulting, you are dropped into a different company every 2 months. You have to learn the industry, you have to figure out what's wrong with the company, and you have to fix it. And the coolest thing about that is that you're put on a different, really steep learning curve 6 times a year.
Yeah.
And so if you come in and you do 3 or 4 years of 80 hours a week in management consulting, you can then exit and you've kind of been trained to be a CEO, right? You know how to tackle the different types of problems. You know how to do root cause problem solving. And I think that because you are the company's product kind of on the front lines, they have a huge incentive to invest in you as their form of R&D.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did not work in management consulting, but I worked with a lot of management consultants during my career. And you learn sales and marketing really, really fast as a management consulting because, as you mentioned, you are both the product, you're the face, and if you're not getting it right, as you mentioned, it reflects very poorly on the employer. So. Kate, let's dive right in. Define for us what a fear-based leader is and how to spot one.
Oh, for sure. So, fear based leaders are leaders that themselves are motivated by fear. When they're lying in bed at night, they're thinking, am I enough? Do people really like me? Will I ever get this right? And because fear is what wakes them up in the morning and keeps them moving, they try to use this to motivate others. And
Mm,
so these are the types of leaders that come in and they say, it's my way or the highway. When I say something, you better jump, get in line or get out.
yeah.
And they're really easily identified by the feeling you get when you're around them. If you find yourself feeling like you have to tiptoe on eggshells around a leader because they're capricious or they shame people, or you can just never do anything right, they're probably a fear based leader.
Yeah. And this, the setup that you gave where they're laying in bed at night. So this whole concept of imposter syndrome it permeates that individual. I have, as I mentioned, part of my life, my business life, I lived that way. I was uncertain about myself and my capabilities, and was I enough? And then that coupled with all of the pressures of getting it right and serving up the operating income that we had promised, that all collides in a really ugly soup. Would you agree?
It does. You could think of it as insecurity stew. Um, when people don't really like themselves and they're really unsure of what they should be doing, they have a tendency to lash out at others. Because if you don't really like or know yourself, it's really hard for you to like or know other people.
Yeah. Yeah, know thyself. Make that investment. Most of my listeners know this, but I marriage counseling was really the key for me personally to awaken my mind and go, wow, there's a different way to communicate. There's a different way to live, and the crossover between marriage counseling and leadership development work is it's really is profound. So I had to find that out in marriage counseling, and I wouldn't recommend it or I wouldn't recommend divorce for anyone. But the marriage counseling, yes, I would recommend because it is so the crossover is just tremendous.
Yeah, I think that that's really true. What I often tell folks is that fear based leaders get stuck in a me versus you orientation. If you reorient with strengths based leadership, it becomes us versus problem.
Right.
And that's very similar to how marriage consulting goes.
Right. Kate, without delving into the political, we don't do that on this show, are domineering, manipulative leaders surging in the workplace right now? And if so, what's the why behind this trend?
Yes, they are definitely surging in the workplace right now. When I first started my career, I had 30 managers in my career, and about 3 out of 10 people that I encountered originally were fear based leaders. And in the last 5 years of my career, about 7 and 10 have been fear based leaders. And while that may be distorted a little bit by the fact that I work in sharp elbowed industries like private equity and venture, it's becoming clearer and clearer that many employees are feeling like they're jumping from the frying pan into the fire. No matter what company they work for, they're ending up in these bad pockets of difficult people. And it's starting to be the case that people can't escape it. So they need a toolkit to thrive
Mm,
with it. And there are a lot of reasons why this is happening. Part of this is around media, television. You see if firm leaders in Game of Thrones, House of Cards, Billions, all of these shows we like to watch have leaders that are very fear-based. And then we're kind of seeing what I would call a gloves off era of permissiveness. It used to be 10 years ago that CEOs had to pretend to care about their employees because it was a no-no. You don't tell them that you wish that they were machines, and you resent that they have human frailties. And now it's totally okay. So you're seeing Mark Zuckerberg say, "This is the year of efficiency. I'm cutting the bottom 20%. Get in line or get out." And it's even starting to affect companies like Microsoft. Satya Nadella has employees dying at their desk, and the response just has not been compassionate.
yeah. Yes, one of the most profound moments that I had in my career, there was a fear-based manager that I was leading, and he walks into my office and he just says, "Andy, people are problems."
Mhm.
I was just like, "What did I just hear come out of your mouth? Oh my goodness!" That just really rocked me. Um, uh, Kate, I like to provide advice, run quick thought experiments. Let's suppose that you have a mid-level manager sitting right in front of you right now, and they report to a fear-based boss. And I'm very particular in that language, boss versus leader.
Mhm.
Uh, and this mid-level manager wants to shield their people from the boss's whims and tirades. What's your advice?
Yeah, shielding employees from this type of leader or boss is really critical. The first thing that this manager can do is to make sure to never give away information about what people on the team care about. Because fear-based leaders will take that information and use it to punish or manipulate the team. So don't say things like, "Sally's so excited to go to her son's Little League game," or, "Man, Manisha, can't wait to go on vacation," because you can bet the fear-based leader will make the person work late to miss the Little League game or take away that person's vacation. The second thing that the manager can do, besides, putting themselves in the meetings with the fear-based leader rather than having the team join, is teaching the team not to react. Because fear-based leaders feed on attention
Mm.
and reactions. And if they come along and start kicking you and your team and you don't react, that's really boring for them. And so they'll pick up and move on if you do that.
Wow. Wow. I just, that's very, very blunt, very, very real. It's all human nature. What do you think about bringing one's whole self into the world of work? I'm a big fan of whole self, but what you just told us would say, don't bring your whole self into the world of work. How do you reconcile those two things in this era of more fear-based leaders?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in my book is breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing means throwing out tidbits about your whole self to test whether it's safe. Um, and so you should bring your whole self to work if you have a caring people leader that you're working for.
Yeah.
If you don't have a caring people leader and you throw out a breadcrumb, maybe you feed them a false fact. "Oh, my mom's sick. It's been really hard caring for her, blah, blah, blah." If they try to use that bit of information to manipulate you, or if they tell you that you're weak because you care about your family more than your job, that's a sign you should not be bringing your whole self into that workplace. Because it's a nice idea to have your whole self there, but you don't want to expose your whole self if someone's going to abuse you over it. And so you
Yeah.
have to put your protection first.
Yeah. So having a compassionate, and there's a difference between empathy and compassion, as my listeners have heard me talk about all the time. So having a compassionate, people-based leader really opens the door then to bringing more of yourself into the world of work. And that fear-based leader, they're missing out on your whole self. So too bad for them, and really too bad for customers and the business. That's the really sad part of all that.
Yeah, you could think of it as they don't deserve your whole self, right?
Yeah. Right. Oh, I always say we don't talk about politics on the show, but boy, this is office politics 401 here. We're going to take a really quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with Kate Lowry. Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app, or visit andrewtemte.com for more information. And we're back with Kate Lowry talking about how to deal with fear-based bosses. Kate, tell us more about your book, Unbreakable. What led to your aha moment when you said, I've got to write a book on this subject?
Well, I certainly didn't expect to write a book this year, so there was definitely an aha moment. I was working with my coaching clients, talking to my peers in Silicon Valley, other venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, folks like that, around February of this year. And what I noticed is that folks were having a really hard time. They felt like the world order was shifting. There was a lot of macroeconomic volatility. Venture was in kind of a downturn, and people were really struggling to cope. And when CEOs have stress responses, it shows up in different ways. Some of them freeze, some of them get really overwhelmed, some of them panic, some of them shut down, don't want to talk to anyone. But what I noticed was that they were having a hard time and I was totally fine. Um, and that's when I was like, uh-oh, I have a toolkit that they don't have and they really need it.
Right.
So I started writing a Substack that would come out each week, giving people tactical tips in kind of bite-sized ways that says, hey, even though you're really stressed, even though you're having a hard time, I'm going to give you a little nugget of information for you to absorb that's going to make things less hard. But, within a period of 10 weeks, I had a book-length Substack. And I went, well, the response I'm getting as I talk to people about this book is that there are a lot of people who need this. We've been seeing a lot of M&A activity. We're seeing a lot of private equity takeovers. We're seeing a lot of new leadership coming in and saying, this is my company now. These are my rules. And so I found the publisher that would get the book out the fastest, and a publicist that would help me get it in the hands of the most people as possible. Because any day that someone feels alone in the face of a bully is like a day too long.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. So during the break, during our banter, we were talking about, maybe during the Great Resignation, during COVID, it was super easy to go out and get another job and test the waters somewhere else. The importance of this book in this moment right now is that hiring is pretty frozen, and those opportunities of jumping ship, going somewhere else, and crossing your fingers and hoping that you get a human-centered leader on the other side, that's actually a pretty low probability. You're probably going to go to that other place, and the grass isn't greener on the other side, as I like to say. It's just different grass. So this toolkit that you've created is really important in this moment. So thank you for writing it. Anything more to add there?
Yeah, what I would say is if you feel like you're cursed and you just can't find a good place to be, it's not just you. You're not doing something wrong. This is just a massive societal shift that we're seeing of people saying, I'm going to be a fear-based leader because it's in vogue. And when something is really in vogue, it's pretty much inescapable. And so I would add, though, that there is still hope for you because, I've been in these environments pretty much my entire life, and I've had a happy, pretty great type of life. I just had to build the toolkit that teaches you how to thrive in the face of adversity. And for people who are like, "Ugh, I just wish there weren't adversity," that's true. But I promise you can really thrive despite it.
Yeah. What's the if you had to pick one of the tools in the toolkit to talk to our audience about today, what would that be?
I think for a lot of people, they don't understand emotional maturity levels. So, fear based leaders are not emotionally mature, which means that their body age does not match their emotional age. And so, if you can, use the chart in my book, which says, okay, you have a leader that's throwing tantrums, that gets cranky easily, they're easily distracted, they've got the emotional maturity of a 2-year old. You need to give them extra breaks, give them lots of snacks, have things ready to distract them. That can really change the game for people. But if you've got a leader that has the emotional maturity of an 8-year-old, they might be super obsessed and going into deep dives about special technologies and shiny things and wanting to play a hero, and that takes a different approach. And so if you can just look at the chart of maybe the 5 or 6 ages I've included in there and then think, okay, I need to actually tailor my approach to these people based on what their capacity is, that can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's so sad because we're supposed to be getting things from our leaders. We're supposed to be getting direction, and especially we're supposed to be getting opportunities for learning and growth. And if your emotional maturity is greater than that of your boss, that's a huge problem. And a lot of people would say, "Well, I don't need this." But if you're just going to go to the next company and get the same thing, you have to have a toolkit like this. So again, thank you for writing this book. Tell us more about the predictability of these bad leadership behaviors and why you may seem powerless, that you actually have some agency in a bad boss situation.
Yes. So these types of leaders will straight up lie to you. They'll say, "You're nothing without me. You're powerless. Resistance is futile." Can feel very Star Wars esque. Um, and you should know that those are lies because people like this are deeply unoriginal. They're not creative,
Mm,
and they use their own internal systems of logic, which, if you understand their logic and you can speak their language, which I teach in my book, you can predict with 95% accuracy what they're going to do next.
mm,
And that means that if you can predict their behaviors, you can just run circles around them.
mm.
And leaders like this are crack me up because they're really arrogant. So even if they specifically read my book, they think, well, that'll never work on me. And then all of it works on them. And so they have, this formulaic type of behavior. And if you learn, the 20 or so tools that teach you how to protect what you care about, you can pretty much skate through unscathed around them.
How does somebody that wants to grow and advance in an organization and be that compassionate, human-centered leader, how then does an individual advance in their career and break through?
Yeah, so you certainly can advance in your career when you're around people like this. But it may involve a little bit of role playing.
Mm,
Um, it also may involve spending a lot of time around the leader, making them feel like you believe in them and you like them. You might have to give them a lot of validation. You might have to tell them how smart they are. You might have to tell them you really believe in their initiatives and in their strategies. And they have to feel like you're on their team as an ally. And you can certainly do that if you pair that with results. If your KPIs are off the charts, which many strengths-based leaders, caring people leaders, results are very good,
Yeah.
then there's no reason that they won't want to promote you.
Mm.
Just because you don't like someone doesn't mean that they can't see you as an ally or you can't pretend to like them. And sometimes that's what you have to do here.
So has the workplace devolved into just a gigantic episode of Love Island? What is that what's happening here? We're all kind of in this in this reality show together.
In a sense, in that fear-based leaders are all about attention.
Yeah.
They're all about image and they're all about posturing. And if you want to engage with them, you have to at least understand the game that they're playing.
Mm.
And that can be really uncomfortable because I don't
Yeah.
see life as a game, but they do.
Right.
And they definitely think the rules don't apply to them. And so it does mean that even if you don't see the world as a game, you have to be able to shift into that mindset to play things out. I often feel like I'm playing 3D chess and the fear based leader is playing checkers.
Right.
And so I can beat them every time. But I do have to be willing to engage in a way that they understand.
Yeah. I imagine that knowing what your red lines are is really important in this, meaning this is a behavior that I'm never going to engage in, a line that I'm never going to cross, because I would be really giving up. That's when the soul crushing really would start to happen. Is that, am I getting that right?
In a sense, people should have boundaries that they're not willing to cross. Um, However, the world is kind of an unfriendly place right now. And so there are going to be some things that you're not going to like doing. But sometimes people think that they either have to completely capitulate or refuse. And in my book, I show that there's actually a whole spectrum of options in between. For example, you can pretend that you can play dumb and pretend that you didn't understand what the fear based leader wanted. And they think everyone around them is stupid anyway. So, you can say, oh my God, I just totally didn't understand. Like, if you want this done well, you just better do it yourself. Or you can play smart and say, surely you didn't mean for me to blackmail Steve because that would be illegal, right? And then see what they say and see if they take a step back and if they play with you or if they put someone else in instead. And so there's a lot of different kind of maneuvers that you can do to spin things out of your particular purview or your particular control. But the last section of my book, the third section, does have specific tips. Well, what do you do if you're asked to do something illegal? What happens if you end in a lawsuit with a fear-based leader? How do you protect your physical safety? How do you protect your cyber safety? How do you protect your energy? Because when you're working for people who believe that they're above the rules, you get into a lot of situations like that.
Yeah. Well, Kate, you're reminding me of some of the most important courses that I had in graduate school, where I did a PhD in finance, but game theory was super important then, and it is now. So I would encourage folks who are more mathematically inclined to get into a little game theory here, because it is important. Kate, this has been a fascinating conversation. I want to ask about Kate the comedian, if we can. What got you into comedy, and what's the most interesting experience you've had in the comedy world?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of years ago, I started writing comedy specials. And this was because really absurd things just kept happening to me. And I felt like a lot of the rest of the world was feeling like that too. So my first comedy special is about this feeling that my life is like a TV show, but it's a drama and I can't talk to the writer, and I really want it to be a comedy instead. And it talks about these really absurd situations. I had a year where I saw 5 different people do illegal things in a month, and I had to decide, what do I do about that? Or,
Mm,
I ended up with health issues where I had like 400 doctor appointments a year for 3 years, and I saw crazy behavior from clinicians and all sorts of people. My second comedy special is called Laughing in Exile. And it's about this feeling that the rest of the world is sleepwalking and I'm the only person awake. And they just keep walking and tripping and falling down the stairs while I'm trying to wake them up. And I'm just like, oh man, you guys. And I think a lot of people are dealing with the world feeling surreal right now. And so the comedies
yeah,
that I record are meant to help people feel less alone and
yeah,
know that there are other people in the world that are more human.
yeah. I want to be really clear today with our listeners. Some might be thinking, "Gosh, you guys have been laughing a lot today, especially me." What Kate and I are talking about is very, very serious business. I'm chuckling because Kate's bringing up behaviors that I've seen over and over again, some that I have exhibited myself. And yes, I wish the world was more awake, alive, open, eyes, ears, mind, much more accepting, but that's not the world that we're living in right now. So while I chuckle, I also strongly support this toolkit that you're talking about, and giving individuals a chance, really a fighting chance, to have a great career in the world of work. So thank you so much for being here, Kate.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, we're not done yet because I've got 3 really quick lightning round questions for you if you're ready. Number 1, you just won $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
Yeah, so I actually design clinical trials and research studies for complex chronic illnesses. These are illnesses that affect up to 20% of the population that are very chronically underdiagnosed. So
Mm,
I would put all of the research money into those trials and then also into funding awareness trainings for medical professionals to help them catch diseases earlier,
mm,
because on average, they can take up to 20 years to diagnose, and people just are stuck sick during that time.
yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Second question, I give you access to a really little time machine. You can send a short message to an earlier version of Kate Lowry. What's the message, and what previous version of yourself do you choose to send it to?
Hmm. I think I would probably go to myself as a 12-year-old and say, "Hey, the most important person that you're going to meet as you grow up is you. Get
Right.
get to know yourself really well, because your needs and your preferences and what lights you up really matters."
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to the first half of the show when we're talking about bad bosses not knowing themselves. A lot of the world's problems can be solved by being more introspective and understanding self first and then trying to understand others. Excellent. Thank you. Kate, we're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
Right now, I'm really focusing on my management toolkit. So I have a whole bunch of different projects. And right now, I'm actually supervising 40 different people. And I am trying to build in the right management layers below me so
Yeah.
that people can just run and go and feel empowered and, have really trust-based relationships.
Yeah.
But I have found that a lot of the types of professionals that I'm working with, doctors, lawyers, publicists, publishers, are not used to working with business executives. And so there's a little bit of a gap to close in terms of understanding what expectations are and making sure that my goals are communicated really clearly on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, Kate, again, thank you so much for being here. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yes, definitely. So check out my website at katelowry.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Kate Unbreakable Lowry. And you can also follow me on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I publish Substacks weekly to both of those platforms if you want to get bite sized content that helps you be a better leader.
Excellent. Thanks again for being here, Kate.
You betcha. Thank you, Andy.
Excellent. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find the show on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this really awesome episode with everybody you can think of. This was a really, really important episode. The show was produced by Nicholas Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.